Happy Monday! So I am just getting back into my office, of course into the studio, after spending a week in Nashville last week. So much fun. Some of it was a family trip, and we did all the things and got some amazing barbecue. If you guys are ever in Nashville, go to Martin's Barbecue. Oh, so good. So let's just jump in today's show. We're talking about websites for your podcast. Now, if you have ever listened to any episode of the Creative Cast or ever heard me speak on podcasting tips and tricks, you know that I have said many, many times that the most critical key to a successful podcast is all about the audio, right? Good audio quality, sound design, using the right mic. Well, that's not exactly true. Having a website is a very fundamental component to getting new listeners, creating community, as well as including your listeners as part of your sales funnel. So for many podcasters, I know that their podcast is an extension of their business, their ministry, and you probably already have a website. Great, fantastic. This episode is not for you. Some of the things that I see in whether I'm critiquing podcasts or I'm just kind of doing research, looking for new podcasts for myself, I come across so many podcasts that don't have either a website or a dedicated landing page that is all theirs. And y'all, that just makes me sad. So while a website or landing page for your podcast may not technically be necessary, there are so many reasons why you should. Because it's going to help increase your reach and the effectiveness of your podcast. Because not only is it going to help you find new listeners, it's also going to give you a way to add value to that current audience. Now, if your goal is to reach as many interested listeners and impact as many lives as possible, having a website or dedicated landing page is going to be the tool that you're going to need to achieve exactly that. Now, as I've talked about numerous times, having listeners discover your podcast is one of the things that podcasters struggle with the most. That's why podcast reviews are so important. So, the easier it is for potential listeners to find your podcast, to find your content, the more likely they are to become new subscribers. Now, your website helps with this. It allows you to gain new traffic and get fresh eyes on your podcast episodes. Now, you could, of course, create a landing page that has podcast archives and it's just like a listing of your content. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. You want something that's going to help showcase the entire collection of your content, showing new listeners the types of topics you discuss and giving them a better, more in-depth glance at what you have to offer. There are a lot of podcasts out there. 2020 was the year of the podcast. And I think the last number that I saw was there was 1.7 million podcasts globally. Y'all, that's a lot of podcasts. But with all those podcasts that are out there, it's so challenging for new podcasters to break through all the, for the lack of a better word, chatter. So let's make sure that you stand out with a well-designed, user-friendly, responsive website with the cohesive branding that can guide new listeners and existing listeners to the valuable content that you have to offer. Having a website is the easiest and best way to give your podcast a dedicated home where your listeners can discover new episodes, share your podcast, and learn more about you and what you have to offer. So you want to have a website that's going to have multiple pages. I don't want to see just a podcast archive with just a list, because you can get that off of Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all that kind of stuff. Want to have multiple pages. So you should have an About You page, a way for people to get in contact with you, social media channels, what services you may offer, what products you may offer, and even maybe a resource page. maybe a resource page with some of your top podcast episodes or your most favorite podcast episodes, because this creates a better experience for your listeners because they have the opportunity to not only play your episodes right there, they can find out all about you, contact you, all of that with a click of a button. Don't forget, you can also have them subscribe to your email list and, like I said, direct them to your various social media channels, making listener retention easier than ever before. I'm sure that your episodes are already jam-packed with amazing content. But y'all, there is more value to be added. Every time you publish an episode, you can repurpose that content on your website with long-form show notes. Now, if you're not exactly sure what I'm talking about, I want you to go back and listen to episode 8. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to put your show notes in the form of a blog post with links that you've mentioned in the episode or a content upgrade that maybe you mentioned within the podcast episode. Because then that post can be picked up by the various search engines, and it's a great way to attract more listeners to the show. It also allows you, like I said, to provide additional resources like ebooks or courses that maybe your listeners can purchase. And then, of course, you're going to add that transcribed show note that provides even more content added to the mix. So if you wanted to go over a deeper dive about all this stuff, I want you to go back to listen to episode 8. You can go to TammyMunsonCreative.com/episode 8. I'm also going to put it in the show notes for you. So the really important thing here is by having a different format of content on your website is not only is it going to give your listeners all the information that you're talking about in your show, but it's also going to appeal to those who maybe don't have time to listen or prefer something in a written format to meet the needs of the hard of hearing and the deaf community. Most websites already come with this blog post functionality already built in. So if you're using WordPress, Squarespace, Showit, it's already built in for you when it comes to what you can achieve with this. As faith-based podcasters, one of our main goals or our mission is to impact the lives of others, to show where God is showing up in our lives, and to help our listeners in some way, shape, or form. Because podcasting, at its core, is truly a social experience. Listeners value podcasting because it can make them feel like they are being included in personal conversations. They're there with you, listening to what you have to say, for you sharing your story over a cup of coffee, to be in the room where it happens. And often, your listeners form a bond with you without even really knowing it. So why not take that connection a step further? Because you can use your website to build a community for your podcast, and it could be the best thing for your show. Listeners come together to connect with you even more. Then they find others who share the same visions that they do within the community that you have created. This extra level of interactivity, this true interactivity, can help your content not only survive, but thrive in today's digital environment. Because like I said, 107 million podcasts out there. Now, because your website offers your listeners a chance to interact with you, you can include things like feedback forms, surveys, questionnaire, quizzes to tap into what your audience thinks so that it makes creating content for other episodes even easier. You could even use some of these questions as a way to create episodes by answering some of those questions on air for your listeners to hear. A prime example of this was last week's episode. It was a question that I got from a listener. It's a relatively common question about how to hire an editor. So let's create an episode about that. Because the more your audience feels included, the more likely they're going to become very loyal super fans who become part of this strong community that you've built. Now, one of the other main benefits of utilizing a website for your podcast is that it can create a central hub for promoting your podcast and for where all the things that relate to your podcast live. Now, since most podcasters are likely to publish on more than one platform, if you're not, you and I really need to talk about this. So you can link to these various places to promote your podcast, and it can be much more successful than simply sending listeners to one single platform, right? And then from your website, you can promote products or recommended resources to your listeners. You could also include maybe a collaboration with another brand or an affiliate for an exclusive listener-only type of opportunity. By utilizing the website, it also allows you to provide them with easy share options so that they can send their favorite episode or episodes to their friends, their families, their connections with a click of a button. So this is all bound to increase your organic reach, as well as help get your podcast into the ears of many more listeners. So last but certainly not least, your website can also be a crucial part of your sales funnel. Now, I know that I don't really talk about sales funnels because I am not an expert in that. I know enough to be dangerous, but your podcast acts as the top of the funnel, gathers a large audience base who all are interested in listening to your episodes. Now, from there, the website acts as the next step in the funnel, guiding listeners who are interested in learning even more about the additional content related to each episode. And then once these listeners are on your website, it could present the perfect opportunity to collect their email address through signing up for your email list. All you need is a simple contact form. Helps you gather that information, which then you could use for further promotion, special edition newsletter, sending out your show notes via email, or even just simple notifications of special podcast episodes, maybe if you're having a special guest, things like that. By having a central hub where they can do all these things removes many barriers that would stop them from listening, that make them become engaged with you, even more so than just listening to your podcast. And it means that you have a straightforward call to action message in your branded platform. Now, the bottom line to all of this is this. If you're serious about your podcast, you need to have that one central location, that home for your show. It's so crucial, y'all, to getting new listeners, creating the community, as well as creating that sales funnel. Now, I know I just sort of scratched the surface on this. So if you have a very specific question, something I've missed, something you need more information on, or even if you're just looking for someone to spruce up your website, I know people. I can help you out with that. So you can go ahead and email support, SPPORT, @TammyMuntonCreative.com. And myself or a member of my team will get back to you. Now, I love getting your comments. I read through each and every one of them. I have to give a shout out to Ash1083. So here's what Ashley said on her review over on Apple Podcasts. The CreativeCast is a true informative podcast. So much insight and knowledge on how to truly have a successful podcast in, as well as some encouragement along the way. I love it. Oh, Ashley, you're so sweet. So thank you so much. Oh, I absolutely love it. Now, if you would like to receive a shout out on a future episode, I want you to go ahead and leave a review for the show. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Now, you can do that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. And I want you to tell me one thing you've learned or loved or hated about the show, because your comments truly mean the world to me. And I want to make this podcast the best possible podcast for you. So thanks so much in advance, y'all. Now, I also want to make sure that you guys tune into next week's show. Oh, it's going to be so good. So my friend Elena Frederick, affiliate manager extraordinaire, e-commerce extraordinaire, my business partner in crime, is going to be on the show, and she completely turned the tables on me. Oh, it's so good. So good. Definitely tune into that. That is next Monday. Now, ladies, I believe in each and every one of you. Y'all are my heroes. I believe inexperience, production fatigue, and intimidating tech should not hold you back. So let's walk through this journey together, okay? So you can spend less time worrying about the details and more time spreading your message. I hope that you have a great day, and I will talk to you next Monday. Bye, y'all.